Sup, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and welcome to a random ramble where I'm just going to talk about various elements of the industry. And I also want to say thanks to all the new patrons, thanks to the new people who are sponsoring on YouTube. Totally awesome. Has actually been super interesting to see those people who maybe just didn't want to use Patron using YouTube. Some people leaving Patron to do YouTube and so forth. It's actually very interesting to see where that sort of lays. And it's nice that YouTube has thrown at least a small bone to us because they keep demonetizing videos. I'm going to cover a little bit about one particular element that I want to talk about, and then I'm going to answer a ton of questions because I put up the thread less than, half an hour ago, and I've got a bunch of questions, far more than I can probably answer. But I want to talk about something in particular. A lot of people ask me about VR and my thoughts on VR. And I've been percolating this thought in the background for quite a while, but one of the things I want to say about VR is it really does remind me personally of the time of the Sega Genesis Mega CD, the Sega CD, which was a system that added a CD-ROM player to your Sega Genesis. And this was a time when we really didn't have anything like this. Everything was cartridge-based. And this CD comes along and it allows for true audio, for example. It allows for digitalized voice, compressed voice, not digitalized voice, but true voice recorded into an MP3 if you wanted. It allowed for movies to be shown. What was really interesting at that time was the games that were played. In fact, we just saw some new remasters or re-releases of these, including Night Trap. But you had Night Trap, you had Sewer Shark, you had Time Gal, you had Road Avengers, you had Dragon's Lair 1 and 2 and 3. I think there was at least 3 of those. Space Ace. Those are some great games when I grew up, but they were really the interactive experiences that I feel we're seeing mimicked now in VR, which I think is one of the reasons why it's not grabbing on as heftily and as heartily as I think it should. In fact, a recent game that I'm looking at right now, and I'll probably have some video. If I don't in this podcast, I apologize. It'll depend on if I can get some video in time, but Voltron. So Voltron's less than an hour. It's a game that came out a couple days ago. The review embargo lifted today. I'm going to cover it in this video, and then I'm going to also talk about it in the international podcast. But it's an interactive experience is all. It's really not in any way, shape, or form using VR to the utmost. Now, this is something I have no problem with if we were actually getting a good number of normal games as well. If these, for example, this is actually something I could see released on Netflix, where it's like, hey, if you have a Rift or a Vive, jump in here and play an episode of Voltron. That's awesome. That's a side note. But instead, somehow, these have sort of intrinsically centered in to the main place in which we experience games. And a lot of them are being released like this, these interactive experiences, which are just go here and do this. I still remember the PR that I got for a game called Everest, and man, they were talking this thing up. They were like, climb to the top of Mount Everest, you're going to be able to do this and going to be able to do that. And really, to be honest, it was far closer to Google Maps and walking around on there like they got one of their little robot cars to drive to the top. It was actually quite disappointing. It was stunningly disappointing, to be honest. And it was one of those situations where I sort of started to draw parallels between your Sega CD and when something like that came about that didn't really change the paradigm back there. But what it did do is it allowed for a unique way in which you could interact with games. It wasn't very robust. Where here we have, I believe, in VR, a fairly robust system that isn't really getting and hasn't really got what it needs. You have Eve, you have, or not Eve, but the one for the Rift. I can't remember the title, but it's based in that world. And then you have Elite Dangerous. Of course, we're going to have Star Citizen. We have Star Trek. Star Trek is really, to me, probably the closest of the games that I feel that really uses VR. I actually just had somebody come over a couple days ago, and we sat down, and voice commands are working for that game. You don't have to be exact with the voice commands, which I, of course, thought you'd have to be. So you're able to basically sit back and be all, engage target, engage the target, engage target now, and it knows it can sort of figure out what you're saying and do it, console and PC. There's a level of interaction there that's just one step past that oddity of a Dragon's Lair game, which is hit left, hit right, which really were, in the end, QuickTime events, and that's it. And I hope we see more of those, but I'm very nervous that we won't. I get that it costs a lot of money, and I get that a Resident Evil, we saw that. We have seen some big titles, but I'm really worried and really nervous that a lot of people just won't take that extra step. And I think with VR, you have various different games. You have racing games and so forth, but those are good. Unfortunately, the graphics capabilities of video cards right now just can't push it to make it look amazing. It'll look good, but it won't look amazing usually. A space game, Elite Dangerous, doesn't look too bad at all in VR. But I'm hoping we see more things like Star Trek, which to me felt like such a great extension, and it was so fun, and it was a communal game, and it did the one thing, and I said this in the review, it did the one thing that I think we don't see a lot of times in VR games. It added the social element back, and it made it look fun to watch. Rec Room is fun to play, but if you watch a video of it, you're like, okay, you might not actually be super into it. But instead, if you watch a video of Star Trek, if you watch, go watch, don't even watch mine, go watch, there's a lot of people who've done videos, or watch mine, whichever. But a lot of times you're going to see and hear people just laughing and having a great time. And it removes the social stigma from VR. And I think that the closer, faster, quicker we can get to that, the better everything will be. So as somebody who's lived through the Sega Genesis Mega CD and lived through those times where everything was a QTE, I really wish I could send an email to all developers and say, please stop. You know, please stop. This Voltron game, there's some bits to like, but at 45 minutes to an hour, it's just like, come on. And really, all you're really doing is able to move within the boundaries that they've set. You really do feel like you're playing a movie, and that you can never really do what you want. There's not an individual power there, which is, strangely enough, the exact, I would think, personification that VR is going for. It's the exact thing VR is pushing, is power, the ability to look around and be affected and affect your game world. And yet, the more experienced games we have, the less you're able to do that. And it doesn't stop them from being good. It doesn't stop them from being enjoyable. Only an idiot would pretend like that means that they're instantly bad. But it certainly is disappointing to not see them sandwiched between more detailed games that really take advantage of VR. So I just wanted to say that. People have asked me about VR quite often. I've talked about it when I can, but it's one of those situations where sometimes you just don't have a chance to identify what you really think of something until you sit back. And this was one of those times where it just sort of clicked of how much it felt like the old times, you know, of turning that Sega CD on and playing, let's see, Time Gal was great. Dragon's Lair was great. These are some of those games that are like cartoons that you play around with, but they really didn't do much else other than, you know, add sound and music and voice and true, I guess, analog sound, music, and voice. And that was sad. So hopefully we'll get more. Let's go with questions. Dugio says, do you find gaming is more innovative now or less? Do you have a pet peeve that developers do in games that drives you crazy? More innovative. No, I don't. I mean, I don't necessarily find that it is, but what I do think happens is that the ease of development has allowed for some people who couldn't have had a unique idea, they're able to do it, whether it be a PUBG, whether it be a Minecraft back in the day. They're able to sort of test things out easier. And so I think that it's not necessarily like everybody has suddenly found a wellspring of ingenuity like a mana pool in a video game, but instead it's more along the lines of the ability is there to tap into it a tiny bit easier, as long as that person takes the time to do so and takes the time to show people why it's unique. We've seen a lot of times where I think somebody has a unique idea, but once it gets into the game, it's hard to find what their idea was. Though that does happen as well. But I don't think we're seeing more innovation. I think what we are seeing is the easier wellspring, the ability to tap into tools and so forth and really use them. And it's something you guys have heard from developers who've been on the channel that, you know, that whether it be, you know, my own dislike for Unity for the most part when it comes to its engine, but the ability to grab an engine and sort of try things out is great. And I think that that's what we're really seeing. Next question is, Boxman says, what's one stupid thing you did as a young kid? One, I used to make razor blade ninja stars. Box cutters, if you take the razor blades out, they're flat backed and you can put them back and back. You can put a little super glue on them and use black tape. Usually black tape was better than any other tape. Duct tape would work as well. And you tape it to support it. And you have yourself an amazing ninja star. And we're talking about, you could buy a ninja star, because, man, when I was a kid, you know, 1990s, 1980s, you would have the kind of situation where somebody was like watching American Ninja on TV, right? Where that was the belief that it was true. Those kind of things really did happen. But you'd go and you'd buy something from Bud K or the back of somebody's warehouse truck, because those, I don't know if they even exist anymore, but there were these trucks that a company ran that would just go to a town square and park for a day, and out of the back they'd sell ninja swords and ninja stars and just crazy stuff, fireworks. So I used to make these, and I tell you, that was one of the dumbest things, because there were times where we played the let's see who can throw it closest to somebody else's face game, and nobody died, and nobody has a disfiguring injury, which is crazy to me that it ever happened. That's one, and that's probably the most legal one. Goldberg says, did you play the survival mode for Far Cry Primal? No, but I've actually got, well, a little bit, but I've actually got it set up where I don't want to talk about it because it's a little bit of a, it might have to do with a video in the future, but I do have some plans for that. As you guys know, I'm actually one of the few people that sort of enjoyed my time with Primal, and I'd like to go back to it. And the survival mode, from everybody I've talked to, they're just really loving it. Let's see. Pengu says, do you think dinosaurs make a game objectively better? Yes, but does this apply to any game? Most likely. The thing about dinosaurs, this is actually a discussion that came up a couple weeks ago, because in the past, it would be various things. It would be dinosaurs, it'd be ninjas, it'd be, whatever. And I think one of the things is that you get that idea in your head of like UFC, Chuck Liddell fighting fucking John Bones Jones, and suddenly a Tyrannosaurus Rex is in there kicking people or swinging at their tail at people or biting them. And it just becomes funny, it becomes jokey. I actually would love to see companies mess around like that with a special character, but that's just me. In real life, though, does it make them better? Nope. Let's see. Nickelback fan says, what do you look forward to when reviewing a game? I just look forward to having that new experience. The experience of games is very cool, and there's a lot of cynicism, and you can still be very critical and not be just overwrought with an almost devastating amount of cynicism that we see. You guys have heard me on the podcast, there's things that really tweak me, but overall, the idea of taking in a game experience and seeing how that entertainment rolls out is far more interesting to me than almost any part of this entire industry. It's sort of seeing what people put together. Did they put it together well or poorly? And what that end product is. So for me, it's just the experience, the new, what's new, what am I going to see? Even if it's a sequel to something, what am I going to see that they tried to change up? Because there are people who are spirited, there are people who are driven, there are people who are absolutely on fire for whatever game that you have in your hand. And everybody can be cynical and pretend every game sucks and pretend they know everything. Whatever, that's stuff children do. What really should, at least to me, what really should happen is looking at the product and identifying it as the sum of its parts. How does it all play together? Because the sum of its parts, when you look at anything, almost everything I own, there's one or two elements of it I don't love, whether it be a vehicle, a home, a computer. I don't love every element of it, but its combined strength and the way it combines together fleshes that over a little bit and sort of sands it down. You have this really good experience. And to me, that's what's great about games, is sort of finding those. Let's see. Turtleman says, in, let's say, RPGs, how many side quests or optional content do you do for a review? Oh, so as much as I can, when I play an RPG, I like to play it very organically. So I will not, unless I'm playing a character in my mind, which happens where I'll be like, this character's, moral, I like the way the story's going, they would help this person, then I will go help that person. If it's gather 10 flowers, unless my character likes to gather flowers, then I may not do that kind of quest. But if it's a quest that seems to me to be connected with sort of a connective tissue underneath between the story, the character, the game world, I will most likely do that. I've talked about this in behind the scenes for the reviews. I'll talk about it later. You don't get rushed that often for reviews as much as I think people would have you believe. And I don't even mean people on purpose. I just mean sometimes even my own complaints. You don't get rushed as much as it seems. And so you do have time to do those things, and you do have time to experience them. And I think that that's probably best. But I also do know some people don't like to do side quests. And for example, there's some games, I'll give you a good example of a game that side quests sort of bother me a little bit. It's a game like Mass Effect, where a world-ending alien race is coming, and your side quest is to basically shine up someone else's poop deck all the time. You're consistently wanting to fuck everything. And to me, I find that quite odd, because here's a character who's like gung-ho militant. He's all, we gotta save the world. Or if you decide to play female Shep, femme Shep as people call it, then the same way. In that type of game, I'm actually usually very militant in what I do, and everything's sort of driven towards that end goal. If it's a little bit more meandering, then my quest work will be the same. Let's see. Tyler says, what's your favorite terrible movie? Easy. Hawk the Slayer. My God, Hawk the Slayer's bad. It's got Jack Palance. It's got a guy from ER. He was a psychiatrist in ER for like 2 or 3 episodes, and he's the main hero. And when you see him, he's got to only be 18, looks about 45, and it's some of the worst special effects ever. For example, and I've explained this on a podcast before. For example, it's a ripoff of Lord of the Rings, but it's prior to the movies of Lord of the Rings. And there's an elf that is supposed to be able to shoot really fast with his bow and arrow, but they didn't have special effects like they do now. So no lie, they cut the same frame. So he basically goes like, and then they repeat it. So it'll be like, and it's just the same arrow. You can even see like the hair go over and over. It's awesome. It's just so great and terrible at the same time. But Hawk the Slayer, if you want a crappy movie, that's a good one to watch. Mark says, how do you get motivated? Currently in a very unmotivated spot in life and could use some advice. Yeah, my advice to you, there's various different ways that I think people can get motivated, and for many people they're different. I many times will think along a certain route and then have to have or seek out sort of data that correlates with what my thought process is, and that sort of motivates me. So I'll be like, oh, this and this and this, I don't really want to do this, but maybe this part will be good. And then I try to find data that sort of correlates with that and pushes me over and goes, okay, you know what? This will be fun, or this will be good, or this will be better for my business, or this will be better for my family. This is what I'm going to do. When it comes to how others can get motivated, everybody's different, but I really do believe in the power of people and the power of actions and doing. And so you'll hear me repeat things that even motivational speakers will talk about. Tony Robbins, personal power. He talks about it all the time. So those type of people, they all sort of retread the same ground, which is, asking active questions, not necessarily why does this happen to me, but what can I do about it? And it's funny because you think that's a stupid change of wording, and it is, but the human brain, that's how the human brain works. Really, when you think about it, if you believe in evolution, the fact is that humans' brains are there to keep them from dying and, to keep them safe. And we're problem-solving machines. And if you concentrate on a problem that isn't there, you can create a problem because your brain's like, okay, obviously there's something happening, so I'm going to create fixes to something that doesn't really exist. And a lot of times that'll happen when you demotivate. It'll happen where you start worrying about other things. I think it's best to sort of sit back and also I'm a big goal person. Like, I'm huge into goals. Whether it be short-term, long-term goals, I always have a goal. I wake up every single morning and I'm like, boom, this is my goal. This is what I'll do. And trust me, there are times when I go online and I find a video demonetized, I cannot describe to you the wind out of your sails. In fact, nothing bothers me like that I can think of off the top of my head. And it's like a lot of people who are YouTubers, Mr. Matty, he does YouTube with me, Alone, GB, Skilled, all of these guys and Dreamcast Guy, all these guys that have done different videos. We all talk about what bothers us, what motivates us. You would be surprised how many times the motivation without understanding what the problem is the worst. Other people, if a commentator or if a poster doesn't like me, who gives a shit? It could be the entire world doesn't. I'd be like, whatever. But when you do something and you can't figure out why, you can't even say YouTube's an ass. They just turn something off that you did and you can't figure out why. That's really difficult for me even. And so I motivate myself with goals, and those goals get ramrodded just like yours. They get destroyed just like yours. And my personal belief is that, it's funny enough, it's actually something you hear in physical martial arts a lot, and physical sports, sorry. But it's something that even the last Rocky movie, I think, when he said, it's about how much you can move forward despite any problems that come up. And he was talking, of course, in boxing terms. So I think he said how much you can get hit and keep moving forward. But that really is what it's about. And my personal belief is not only that, I get stoked by working with others. And so when I work with other YouTubers, it's, to me, one of the best things ever. You have your days, right? But you need to be motivated and you need to work on it. And you need to find something that stokes you. And usually what you need to do is find something that really just gets you fiery and gets you excited, and then try to recreate that, try to figure out what it is, try to distill that down. Sorry that took so long, but I sort of want to explain myself because I don't really feel like a self-help guru. So I want to make sure I explain myself as well as possible. Johnny Mo says, do you Twitch? Yeah, sometimes. Depends if I'm really tired. No, Twitch, I do or did. It's one of those problems where I'm more into the game than I am into like having 1,000 people wanting me to say something funny. And I don't really like a lot of the NDAs and stuff that go on Twitch. I don't like some of the weird cliquish shit that goes on there. So, but I will probably do more, to be honest. I will stream on both Twitch and YouTube and see how that goes. So you will see me there more. But I think you also see me, I'll probably make a move to maybe Mixer or something like that. I have some things in the fire that I don't want to talk about that are pretty friggin' cool. So stay tuned, I guess. Let's see. Nate Skinner, will you be reviewing more sports titles? Will 2K ever get the NFL license back? How in the heck is Hob not on Switch? I'll answer those in reverse. How is Hob not on Switch? I don't know. Bad idea if it's not. I thought Hob was. Did I just not mention it? I thought, yeah. Anyway, if it's not, it's a bad idea. Will 2K ever get the NFL license back? I think 2K, man, I can't remember how the licensings work, but if you're talking about 2K NFL, like, will it ever get the NFL license back? I don't know exactly what you mean there. I thought they have the license. Maybe I'm completely spaced there. Will you be reviewing more sports titles? Yeah. So with sports, UFC 2 I reviewed, UFC 1 I reviewed. I'll definitely review sports. What happens is those companies have a tradition of a particular YouTuber that they go for, and I think that they nail those YouTubers and do what they can to make sure that those YouTubers get the videos out on time and get their code on time, and they don't really worry about anybody else. So it's a little harder to do sports, but if there's any sports that I can do, I will for sure cover them. I'll cover pretty much anything. There's very few games that I don't really want to try out, even if they're terrible. So, Dale Watts, what's up? At Kramer Guitars, do you practice karate in your garage after building bunk beds? Inside joke. Yes, I do. Bad Bit Game says, how do you deal with a gaming burnout? How do you review something when you're in a gaming rut? So, okay, this is weird. I just don't get burnout. One of the reasons I would say why is because my prior employment before this was freakishly stressful. And whether that has prepared me for this or whatever, I just don't get burnout because to me it's so great. To me Fridays we get to do podcasts, talk about games. It's going to be great. Tuesday we're going to do a VR game. Okay, that's great. Thursday I'm going to do by myself solo RPG all the way until Sunday. Okay, that's great. It's difficult for me to sort of even understand sometimes the cynicism that sort of pervades what the thought process is for somebody like myself. It's very difficult. I think over time it can probably grind on you, but for me right now, it doesn't only not grind on me, it just makes me even more excited. So to me, I'm just like, okay, people always ask me like, how do you review so many games? And as I've said before, it's not that many games. But what the real also answer is that I'm pretty excited about games. So if somebody says on a Saturday, you want to review this game, it's due on Monday, and it's a 6-hour game or 8-hour game, yeah, whatever. I mean, what else really would I be doing? I would be building something, or I would be doing teaching. I would be boxing. I would be doing those things. I can still do those things. So to me, it's one of the most perfect hobbies a person could have, and luckily people like watching the videos, and so therefore it can actually be one that works out for both parties, and it's not just one giving and one taking. It actually works. Go Burns, what's your favorite time of year? Oh, winter. Fall is pretty awesome. I'm a big rain and wind fan. The cooler, 65 degrees, windy. That's me. Big fan of that. Always have been. Fall, Halloween, that kind of shit. Absolutely my favorite time of year. Corn mazes, that kind of stuff. Love it. Christmas, love it. Right after Christmas, I'm like, damn it. What is this glowing orb in the sky? I'm not a big fan. So, yeah, fall and winter for sure. Brandon says, is it true you're reviewing KOTOR? It's true that it may be on the classic list, yes. And if so, will KOTOR 2 get a review as well? If I do one game, it means nothing compared to the next. I mean, I could, but I might not as well. Thomas says, what's the game you really enjoyed despite it having some serious flaws? We've answered that one before, so I don't want to answer it again. And my answer would be the same. So, yeah, I'll have to move on. Let's see. Ethan T says, you mentioned that in some of your discussions, the AC Origins preview stuff looks a little rough. What are your thoughts so far on the upcoming Assassin's Creed game? Yeah, so the Assassin's Creed game, I've talked about this before. If you don't understand what he's referencing in that question, is the fact that especially with the animation, there is some certain melding of animations that are going on that looks a little rough to me. Some collision detection that looks rough. Of course, collision detection would be something as simple as a spear against a shield. If it's supposed to bounce off, I don't want to see it go 6 inches into the shield and then bounce off. And there are ways around that depending on how you handle your animation and your collision detection and how you program. So for me right now, there's various elements that look really goofy. And you guys know I'm not a hater of any game with a long series of titles. It's just not me. I'm not into that. I don't have time for fake hate. I have time for real hate. Real stuff pisses me off. This fake shit doesn't, it means nothing to me. So the fact that we're getting another Assassin's Creed, that doesn't bother me. But the fact that, like, the boat looks like it's fucking out of Miami Vice, it's going so fast, and there's no wind anywhere, but the wind in the sails are... That kind of stuff, it sounds stupid, but that kind of stuff bothers me, where I'm looking at it going, well, that's sort of weird. What is that? One or two issues never impact overall. Okay? That would be idiotic. I don't do it that way. I won't be like, one issue, this is terrible. But if those issues crop up together, what they do is they push you, and I've talked about this before, they push you out of the fiction, they push you out of the experience, and they certainly remove you from the immersion. And if that happens, and it impacts your enjoyment, then of course that would impact the game score. And I am worried about that with Assassin's Creed, but I'm certainly keeping an open mind. I always will. Gabriel says, why are you called Angry Centaur Gaming? Your reviews are level-headed, concise, balanced, and objective without any hot-headed outburst. And even when you're swearing, there's a joke. Well, I'm not anymore. I'm ACG. I used to be. That was a role-playing joke, or an old like nickname that I got from Clatio. I wonder if he's watching. I bet she's not. I bet she doesn't even know that I do this. South American kid, one of the nicest guys in the world. So nice, man. He was one of the nicest people you'd ever meet. I've always believed that there's something, I'm not a spiritual person really, but I've always believed that there's sometimes you'll meet somebody and you'll be like, man, was that person there just for this time? Because if they weren't, some shit would have gone really poorly. And he was just one of the greatest guys. He was a roommate of mine, but he was dirty. And I don't mean dirty. I mean, this dude leveled up his dirty score until he was like master level dirty. And love you, Claudio, if you're watching. So I love this kid, man. I love him. And his room, I would open the door and it was right out of a comic book or a jokey movie where your clothes actually sort of shifted and moved. And these clothes would be piled, I mean, just high and crunched together. And they look like somebody had just wringed them, like wet them like a towel and then wringed them out and left them just wrinkles upon wrinkles. I swear to shit, somebody probably could have developed a brand new stealth technology just by looking at his Levi's, because there were so many different fucking angles on there. And one day I walked into his room and he had Kool-Aid. He played video games at his computer and he had Kool-Aid, and it had been there so long that the sugary Kool-Aid had a film on it that almost 100% sure would have tested positive for various molds. And he knew I role-played. He role-played with us sometimes. And I was in there and I was raging. I was like, dude, this is just impossible. You can't be like this. And I was kicking his clothes around, not in a bad way, more in a jokey way. And he called me that. He was like, you're like that horseman, because he didn't know how to say centaur. You're like an angry horseman roommate. And I was like, an angry centaur roommate? And that sort of became the joke. And then it became a rock band name that we used in Rock Band when we played it sometimes. We had some dirty names as well, but you know, they seem to figure that out quite quickly. I noticed that I used to be able to name characters or name bands pretty dirty, and then all of a sudden I was like trying to name them and it wouldn't work. So that was the fallback. And this this channel was created just randomly because there was no plan to do it as a career. So I was just like, boom, you know, this is the way it goes. And then over time, it just sort of blossomed from there. So that's the genesis of that name. Gareth Evans says, what game are you most looking forward to reviewing, playing that's still to be released this year? I usually don't work like that, just being honest, because all games, big or small, it's one of the reasons why a lot of people will be like, why did you review Hob versus this? Why did you review this versus this? And it's because games as a whole interest me. I've said this multiple times. I'm fired up by them. I absolutely love to look at them, even shitty ones. And there have been some shitty ones. I mean, even like NBA 2K, where I'm just like, this game is not even good if you removed the microtransactions. There are a stunning number of problems. But I like to engage with them. I like to see what people's time have created and what they're trying to sell, and I like to do that. And so that's I would say that it's just the experience, and there isn't really a particular game that I'm really interested in playing this year. I want Star Citizen, and I don't have any worry that Star Citizen is coming out. I think it's delayed and not coming out like we all wanted, but I've enjoyed my time with Star Citizen as well, and I want that to come out because I've always been a fan of Freelancer, Starlancer, Free Space. There's the one other one. I can't remember its name, but there was a lot of really good games like that. I've always been a fan of that. But overall, I would say nothing really in particular. Let's see. Jeremy Markey says, 2 truths and a lie. Let's guess which one is which. I've met Sylvester Stallone. In 1 year, I grew 6 inches. And I cut a bike in half with my head. Enjoy. Those will be enjoyable to see who can guess which ones of those. Whoa! Okay, so we got some more here. And I will answer these last ones, and then we'll be done with this video. Let's see. Troy says, will you be doing any more streaming events similar to No Man's Sky 24-hour marathon? Yes, I will. That's all I want to say about that, but I absolutely will. It's something that it just takes a while to get these together. I think people forget that, to me, Patron's important, so the shirts and the physical rewards, and the cost there is extraordinary if you don't take care of it early in the month. You know, you don't want to ship somebody something in an emergency because it's going to cost 4 times the amount to ship, that kind of stuff. So I'm always working on Patron rewards, the physical rewards, putting them together, together the Karak crate. Somebody sent me a picture of their Karak crate yesterday. They're like, what the? Those are awesome. Those are so fun to put together. But they take me a long time. But then you have reviews, and the reviews will always take precedent. They'll always be super important. But I do want to do more streaming events. You will see them happen. Let's see. Ryu Mendez says, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. This is a game that's been reviewed a lot on YouTube and more. The game's somewhat popular and isn't exactly new, but it's never been reviewed in your style. Would you consider reviewing it? State the reasons why or why not. No, I wouldn't. I'm more of a consumer-based reviewer. What I mean is, I review in the way, and I feel like this is what I got out of the money. So buy, wait for sale, rent, never touch. I get that people like the videos, but they're not for the entertainment factor, even though people are entertained by them, to me. They are for getting information about my experience out there. It's one of the reasons why whenever anybody gets mad about one of my reviews, I'm just like, okay, whatever. Like, it makes no sense. You can get as mad as you want, but it's just one person saying exactly what they experienced in a game. And then moving on, putting your head down and doing another review. Like, so to me, that's why those things are done. I don't really go back and re-review something. The classic reviews that for Patron, I'm definitely putting together, and it's super important to me to do, 1 or 2 of those a month. It just really depends on what I can get done in a month. But no, I probably wouldn't re-review Bloodlines. I mean, I'm just not. It's not really about that. It's because there are so many games that I would love to re-review. But in the end, I'm really more interested in reviewing something that's coming out and having a consumer be able to say, I may not always agree with Karak. Okay, whatever. But he's telling me what he experienced. And so I can at least look at it and go, okay, what did he experience? that's an experience base. You can I wouldn't even have to put a score on it if I don't want to. At least that information is out there. That to me is more important. Let's see. Alucia says, "What board games have you played recently, and what did you think of them?" Last one was Talisman, right? Yeah, Talisman. Yeah, Talisman, and I love it. I've always liked Talisman. So to me, it's an enjoyable game. It's sort of a fallback game. Actually, no, I scratched that. We ended up playing Tabletop Simulator with the patrons. I'm sorry, I can't believe I forgot that. We had a good number of patrons. I did about 6 games, each one with 4 or 5 patrons, where we did DC collectible card game is what it's called. And I really like it, and I never thought I would. Even when it was bought for me as a gift, I looked at it and I'm like, this is probably not for me. And it's turned out to be absolutely one of my favorite games. Very enjoyable to get into, but the strategies you can put together are all-encompassing or fairly simple, and both can work, and that's what I love, and it's rare in a game, I would say. Let's see. Sophia says, "Is there a game you've reviewed poorly only to regret it later, or on the other hand, is there a game you rated higher only to change your mind?" No. I mean, it doesn't work like that for me at all. It would be, I just don't work that way. I mean, I'm pretty open about like what I think about something, and one of the things that's great about this rating scale is it's not a 1 through 10. It's not even a 1 through 5. It's really a 1 through 4. And even that doesn't work, because when I say don't touch, I mean, a 1 can still say you might want to do something. You might want to get it at 99 cents. When I say don't touch, I mean, that's what it means. Like, they would need to give me money to experience this again. So they're a little bit broader, and I can talk about the fun factor, and I can talk about these things, and I can discuss them in a way that really makes sense to me. And so there's never ever been a time where afterwards I've been all, man, I should change this. If that's ever happened, it's because of a technical issue where the technical issues were happening to me and they patch it later, and I certainly would go back and re-review that if I can. Rarely can, but if I can, because that only makes sense. Because if it's a new experience, hey, you could say, you know what, this is what I used to say, this is what I'm saying now, and having people move forward if that rating changed. But no, I mean, it's pretty easy. It's just like, I would buy this, I would probably wait for a sale for this, I would wait for a deep sale for this, or I will never touch this. And to me, it just works perfect. For the other people on the podcast who don't review games, oh, okay, that was a different style question. Noah says, what are some of your favorite couch co-op titles? And what would you like to see in couch co-op? For me, couch co-op, Serious Sam. 2, I think, on the original Xbox. I think that was the one. We had, I made awards for people, and we had all different kinds of games. We had that. We did the Star Wars, what was it called? The Battlefront at that time as well, I think. We played that. We had awards. We did Test Drive. Which one had split screen in that? I can't remember which, but we did that as well. And, of course, Halo. For me, the one that really, I think, solidified my enjoyment and understanding was Ghost Recon on the Dreamcast, because I still remember the story. You guys have heard this, so I'm repeating myself. But the story and the enjoyment I had, we had a 4-player game, and we were all good at something. And it was deathmatch. We were all good at something. We all knew that there was particular weaknesses somebody may have had. And it was starting to get to that point to where it was like rock, paper, scissors plus another one, right? And all of a sudden, I was running through, I just started, this is what I've done now as well. This was the first time this happened, and it's how I view most games now. I just detached while I was playing. I remember playing, and I'm like, whoa, I just felt detached from it. I was like, what's happening? And I started looking around the level, and I'm like, you know what? If I set plant the C4 here, and then wait for an enemy, and then shoot, let him hit me or come close to me, and then pretend to run. When he comes around that corner, I can blow him with C4. And it worked brilliantly. Roger, who I don't know if he watches these, I don't have a lot of contact with him anymore. He came around the corner, and we were firing at each other, and he hit near me, and I on purpose, because he was sitting next to me, I was like, oh God. So I wanted to make it sound like I was selling it. I was selling it. It was like a mark in the WWE. And I turned around and I ran into this room and I just waited. And he came and he even pied the corner. Like, he knew what he was doing, but it's C4, right? And the corner wasn't so big. He came around that corner. I was like, boom. And he's all, was that a grenade or C4? And I was like, no, it's C4. And from that point on, We started laying traps for people. You never knew. And that's what co-op, I think, allows, is for acting in a way. It allows for people on the same, if you're doing co-op with the couch, it allows for people to sort of play with your mind mentally. I would do it in Halo. From that point on, people hated to play against me in Halo because in Halo multiplayer, I would consistently bait them into doing something. And they would be like, oh, he's hurt. And you just bait them. I would do things like test how long it took a grenade thrown at a certain arc to hit the entrance of a tunnel. And so I would lead the person to the tunnel and then arc the grenade and just wait. And I knew that if they ran at a certain speed, which they probably would, that grenade would land right on them. Sorry, Mike, because I know Mike watches these sometimes, and I know he probably hates that. But there was quite a few times where somebody would come out that tunnel and a grenade would go, boonk, and I would be halfway across the level. So, though, to me, couch co-op is great, and all games. I would like to see all games with them. It won't happen, but Rizilla says, any chance Peter North will be a guest star in your podcast? Probably not, but I have dropped his name a couple times. Samuel says, have you ever been a fan of Mountain Blade? Fucking absolutely. Yeah, there was a mod for Mountain Blade. Oh, Silver and I have talked about this, and I apologize. I can't remember the name of the mod, but it was one of the major ones. And it added, a ton of different foods. It upped the amount of people you could have, all this crazy stuff. And I played Mountain Blade. I played Mountain Blade for a couple weeks in a row, pretty much. Love that game. Finally, will you be reviewing the new Mountain Blade? Yeah, if it ever comes out. And then he says, hopefully they'll announce a release date within the next 10 years. Yeah, for sure. Alex says, hey, Karak. Hey. Leeson says, you mentioned in the past that you're not so easy to affect emotionally. Have you ever played a game or watched a movie that brought you to tears? No. No. I mean, I feel emotion when I watch a movie, and there's certain things that I like a lot in movies. Loyalty between friends. The scene, if you're older, you remember it from the original. If you're younger, you remember it from the newer movie. But in Star Trek, when Spock was dying and Kirk and Spock were talking to each other, in the original, Spock passes away, and in the new one, Kirk did. And I felt that was it showed a complete lack of understanding from the director of why it actually mattered that Kirk had or that Spock had died in the original. And so even though there's rumors now that they were saying that he had died on purpose so that Leonard Nimoy could get a director gig, but it doesn't matter because it worked. I like loyalty and their loyalty. I like those friendships. I love movies about friendships and people who just are really, really close, good friends, really loyalty to each other. I really like those. Those give me a feeling of something, but I don't really ever feel choked up about anything. Really good narrative will catch me smiling or laughing. But I will say this, of all the actors that could possibly get me to feel something, there's only one actor in the world that has ever caused me to go, oh, wow. And that's John Noble, and he does Walter in Fringe, and he was Scarecrow in Batman Arkham Knight. And his ability as Walter, in particular, by the way, because he's also in Salvation, and he was okay in that. But his particular ability as Walter in Fringe was heart-wrenching. And in that, I don't want to ruin it for people, but he played, at times he might have played multiple versions of himself, and you see this, whether it be Jean-Claude Van Damme or some other motherfucker trying to play a movie where they're twins or something like that, and you're like, it's the same guy with his hair parted on the opposite side. Not John Noble, man. He played two versions of Walter, and I'm telling you, it was crazy. It was crazy talent, and that guy could probably make me choke up. He has something that I think very, very few people have. Peter O'Toole had it. You would hear stories about him. He would have it. 2, have you done much traveling? If so, what are your favorite countries? If not, top of your list. No, let's see. Hawaii, Puerto Rico, a couple places. Not many, though. My favorite, I would like to go to Ireland or Scotland. I think that would be great. Did you ever play Neverwinter Nights on roleplay-only servers? Yes, I actually played the Dragonlance server and a Ravenloft server, and I played them for months and actually helped mod a little bit as well. Very, very good games. Do any other games actually have RP servers and have players stick to staying in character? Yeah, I mean, there are many RPGs that have come out, single player games with a D&D mode, those kind of stuff, where people try to put together a true role playing server. It's rare. I think with Neverwinter Nights, what worked so well is it actually wasn't super hard to mod. It wasn't easy, and the level of complexity could rise dramatically, but you could get something out there. It reminds me of Operation Flashpoint. I could get you a mod or a level, a custom level, we'll say, in just a couple minutes that would play differently every single time you entered it. You would start in a unique place, and it was like that. But then if you saw somebody who knew what they were doing, it was like a whole other game. And I love that kind of stuff, and I think that you need that for a role-playing server. We don't see it very much, but Neverwinter Nights will consistently and probably always be one of those memories that one of those things I'll just remember forever. Joe W. says, I'm a lifelong gamer, but never really played Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm excited to play Sonic Forces, but I'm quickly learning that the internet's Sonic fanbase is divisive and bitter. How do you feel about the Sonic franchise and property overall? So originally, you know, Sega, the original fucking voices that happened when Sonic the Hedgehog was turned on, I loved Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2, I think. They started getting a little bit odd to me. That I wasn't a big fan of the 3D ones like some people were. But I think that it is no different than any other long-standing franchise. It's had its ups, it's had its downs. There are ones that have done successfully for a longer period of time and ones that have done poorly for a longer period of time. So there's really nothing special to me about the Sonic fandom. There's nothing special to me about the Sonic character. But I certainly do or did enjoy those originals. And I'm not really into it anymore. I even passed up the review copy because it's not that I don't like that type of game. At that time, there was another game I had to review. I should have made that clear. But I passed it up because it didn't fire me up like I felt it should. And I think that's just because, you know, if I want to see a new Sonic, I want it to do something different. And these recent ones haven't. So let's see. Personal question, but no hard feelings if you don't answer. I enjoy certain levels of privacy, so I'd understand. What country do you live in and what profession are you in? I'm in this profession, YouTube, and I live in the United States. There's nothing wrong with asking that. Those are totally fine questions. I'm going to reload this page one last time so people feel like they're getting the answers that they deserve, and then we'll move on. Yeah, so that's it. I do want to say thanks to everybody who watched. I definitely appreciate it. It's always fun to answer these and give you guys information. You will be seeing more reviews from me, of course. I'll probably put some Voltron footage in this video, maybe. But you're going to see some coverage of that in particular, probably during the podcast as well, where we talk about VR. There will be more podcasts. We're doing a Patron podcast, or I'm doing a Patron podcast tomorrow. I always say we because I'm talking about patrons half the time as well, because I do a lot of stuff with the patrons. So you should see some of that. Doing a lot of reviews, Battle Chasers, a lot of reviews that are a little bit farther out, too. So this has given me, I think, 1 to 2 days to sort of do some more patron stuff at the end of this month and get it moving forward. I just want to say, as we end this, you know, I really do appreciate people sticking with me, whether you agree every time or whether you disagree every time, or whether, you know, we annoy one another at a random time, whatever it may be. I definitely do really appreciate you guys like sticking with me. It's one of the things that it really does sort of fire me up to go, okay, I get it. Somebody feels true worth. And it's hard to describe unless you really know the feeling. But it's hard to describe to somebody that what you created, somebody else found true worth. And when you talk to an artist, when you talk to somebody who paints, when you talk to somebody who sings, and those are purchased, people always are like anti-money, strangely enough. But it's funny that is one of the ways, one of the easiest ways to sort of put your money where your mouth is, to show, just like in a developer, when you hear somebody say, hey, I'm supporting these guys, or I'm not supporting them. It's a feeling of going, okay, this is working for them. It's not going to work for everybody. A lot of people, I think, thinks, you know, they get upset. They're like, it's not working for me. You know, so it must not be working for everybody. It's not the way it is. There's almost always some contingent out there. Hell, I could do a video. I could do an entire YouTube channel just on flat Earth, and I would have a good number of subscribers. So it's when it comes to video games, it's not that crazy. But I just want to say thanks, man. It's been an amazing time, and I'm hoping for many years to continue. So I haven't got burnt out yet. Hopefully. We'll see. If you guys suddenly notice that I'm all, sup everybody, this is Garrett. Or I'm all, graphics are up first. Nah, it's pretty good. Sound, music, and voice. Then you know there's a problem, and you might want to email me and be like, do we need to put you on a suicide watch? But that's it for me. I don't have anything else. I'm looking around to try to remember if there was something else I was going to tell you guys. I wasn't. Peace out, and enjoy the rest of your week.